I'd like to welcome everybody to our first HeatSmart Bolton Harvard Meet the Installer Night. We have another one scheduled identical to this for the town of Harvard at the town hall next week. I recognize a lot of you out there as Bolton residents. Is there anyone here from Harvard? Good. Welcome. This is our agenda. We have some introductions and then an overview of HeatSmart by Meg, the program manager. Now we'll go through next steps, and we have presentations from each installer, and finally a questions and answers panel at the end. We know there'll be a lot of questions, but we're asking you if you could hold your questions until the Q&A session at the end for two reasons. First of all, the questions likely to be answered throughout the evening. And secondly, it makes it easier we are recording this, so we want to make sure that they get the sound and the picture and everything all in sync. This is our Harvard Bolton team. We put Harvard in red and Bolton in blue here for the purposes of this chart. Here to my right is Eric Broadbent, the HeatSmart coach from Harvard. And is Ellen here?
She's coming.
Ellen will be coming later. I don't believe Carol will be coming.
No.
Okay. And then we have additional volunteers, Tim Clark and George Snyder. This is me, and Heather March, our tackle, is here with us. So could you wave? Thank you. And Don Lowe won't be with us tonight. He had a prior commitment that his wife signed him up for. So, and then we have a number of additional volunteers. If all of you could kind of stand up or wave or something and be recognized. We just got our official HeatSmart blue T-shirts now. So most of the people that you see with the blue T-shirts on are volunteers. And the purple box here is you. We could always use more help. So if you're interested in participating or helping, either as a volunteer or as a customer, we're very much interested in doing that. Meg Howard is the program manager. Can you just, and she has been working very hard with us all along here. And this is a pilot program, so it's the first of its kind. So we're kind of like the pioneers who go out and we end up with the arrows in our hat maybe a little bit, but
hopefully not too much.
We're learning a lot. Yeah. Next week in Harvard, Aaron Camp will be filling in instead of Meg. We have with us Kelly Brown from DOER. Many of you are familiar with Kelly. She was instrumental in getting us to be a green community. And she was just telling me that I think it's roughly 2/3 of the communities in Massachusetts now are green communities. So that's making a lot of progress throughout the state. We're very proud of that. And there are a few more people behind the scenes here in DOER as well. Our installers, we went through a lot of effort. We got actually 11 different proposals because we had two different technologies, and it was a lot of work because all the proposals were good. They had good points and not so good, but we weighed them all. We worked diligently using scoring with the help of Cadmus, and we selected Boucher Energy Systems for the air source heat pumps and Bill Wenzel Heating and Air Conditioning for the ground source. And with Bill Wenzel today is the well driller, Skillings. Roger Skillings. Next we have the HeatSmart overview, and Meg will present that.
Thanks, Tony. Before I get started, I just want to say how enormously excited I am to be here tonight. Like Tony said, this is a pilot, and this is actually the very first kickoff in the first pilot community of all of HeatSmart. So this is a big campaign we're undertaking to see if we can reimagine how we heat and cool our homes for the 21st century. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight and beginning to explore this journey with us. So what is HeatSmart Mass? It is a community-based education, outreach, and bulk procurement campaign that's based on the Solarize model that a lot of you might know from both the Solarize Bolton as well as Solarize Harvard, where we work with the communities, and they have selected and vetted installers who are able to offer discounted pricing. But this is a pilot, so we're trying to apply this model to heating and cooling for the first time. And like Tony said, we'll be learning a lot about what translates, what doesn't, what's different, what's the same. Our overall goals for this kind of campaign are increasing education and awareness. If we're going to change how people heat and cool their homes, it's not going to happen overnight. So a big goal here is just to get all of you in the community familiar with these two technologies, air source and ground source. And then of course to install the technologies, which will lead to greenhouse gas reductions. And then finally to do both good quality work, promoting best practices of install as well as discounted price to make sure that it's a good experience for all the projects going through this program, and also strengthening the industry in the long term. So if you just advance the next slide one click, it will show how some of this group purchasing can help drive down the discounting by doing outreach, bringing in leads, maybe getting some equipment bulk discounts for the installers. And if you go on to the next slide, it shows there are a lot of players in this kind of campaign. So if you click once more, I'm here tonight from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. Kelly's from Department of Energy Resources. We're here to kind of help facilitate this campaign, provide some support, and a key partner for us is Meister Cadmus. They're the technical consultants, so they're also providing support. And at the meeting next week, Aaron from that group will be here representing them. And then if you go one more, the next group is the community organizers. So that's everyone in the blue shirts here tonight, led by your HeatSmart coaches, Tony and Eric. And I'm sure you guys can guess this, but I just want to say how much work they're all doing, that they will literally put in hundreds of hours on this campaign. And they've already put in just enormous work doing the installer selection, developing a marketing plan, website, outreach materials, putting together this event tonight. It's just very inspirational to watch all the work that they're putting into this campaign. The next key player is the installers, Boucher Energy Systems and Bill Wenzel Heating and AC, who you'll hear more from tonight. If you're interested in either air source or ground source heat pumps, they'll offer you a no-cost home site assessment, and they'll offer a quote. And if you do decide to go forward, they'll contract with you at kind of standardized discounted pricing through the HeatSmart campaign. And then if you are interested, they also can both offer long-term servicing and maintenance with them. And then the final player is all of you. So thank you. First step was being here tonight, and we appreciate it. If what you're hearing tonight sounds like it might be a good fit for you in your home, go talk to these installers afterwards. They'll get you signed up and figure out some time to come by your home and take a look. And whether or not you're interested for yourself, just please talk it up in the community and make sure people know about this and get involved. So that's the team. This is a quick timeline of some steps we've taken to get to this point tonight. Communities applied for the pilot on September 15th. And then Mass CEC announced the 4 selected pilot communities November 15th. January 5th, we got bids in from, like Tony said, 11 different proposals for air source and ground source heat pump installers here in Bolton and Harvard. And over the last couple months, this community, along with support from our technical consultant, has been doing interviews, follow-up questions, reference checks to select these 2 installers who are here tonight. We officially opened up the website for sign-ups for site visits starting this Monday, and here we are tonight and next week having these kickoff meetings, meet the installer nights. We expect customer sign-ups to go through this July, the end of this July. And then you'd have another year from when the contract is signed to figure out a time between you and the installers of when's the best time to actually have the work done. So that's a summary of the timeline. And that's kind of the HeatSmart model. I want to take a step back now and talk a little bit about why Mass CEC is even supporting clean heating and cooling technologies. I think a lot of you know the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has very aggressive greenhouse gas goals. We have one trying to get to 25% below our 2005 levels by 2020, and then 50% below those levels by 2050. Sorry, 80% below those levels by 2050. If you look at the pie chart on this graph, about a third of our state's greenhouse gas emissions come from heating. So if we really want to be hitting that kind of transformational 80% number by 2050, we have to look at that piece of the pie. You know, there's going to be a lot of solutions to get us there, but this heating is one we can't ignore. And we can address part of it through efficiency, essentially just shrinking that load, using less heat. But to really get to that 80% number, we're going to have solutions other than burning fossil fuels in homes for heating. So that's kind of why Mass CEC got involved in supporting these technologies in the first place, to offer sort of the electric car for heating. And like electric cars, we think that these technologies can also, in addition to greenhouse gas benefits, offer comfort and operational benefits, and operational cost savings, especially in towns like Bolton and Harvard, where there's really high use of high-cost heating fuels like fuel oil. So if you go on to the next slide, this just shows the progress we've made. We're getting close to that 2020 timeline and not too far off that goal, but to really get to the 2050 goal, we're going to have to do some pretty transformational changes to how we use energy in this state. And in a way, 2050 feels far off, but in other ways, it's not that far off. And one way to think about it is, how many times is your home likely to have a new heating system between now and 2050? Really, it's probably once, maybe twice. You know, these are kind of long-term decisions that are going to affect how we can reach our 2050 goals. So if you go to the next slide, this slide shows the greenhouse gas implications of heat pumps compared to fossil fuels in the darker bars. The solid bars are showing heat pumps using standard grid mix of electricity, and the dashed lines above it show that they have slightly higher emissions during the peak times when some dirtier fossil fuel plants come online to generate electricity, since heat pumps do run off of electricity. So the good news is that air source and ground source heat pumps right now, either under standard conditions or even peak conditions, are generating a lot less greenhouse gas emissions than oil or natural gas. And the better news is that as the grid gets cleaner over the lifetime of these heat pumps, they'll only have lower and lower emissions. And if you have PV for your electricity, you're already then getting no emissions if that's the source of your electricity. Or if your communities decide to buy greener electricity, those bars will go down for the heat pumps too. On the next slide shows the 4 technologies that Mass CEC supports in the clean heating and cooling realm: solar hot water, modern wood heat, and then cold climate air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. If you advance a little bit, one more, the 2 technologies that we're focusing on tonight are the 2 heat pump technologies. So we can keep going here. One more. And just at a very high level, kind of the 101 of air source heat pumps, and Boucher Energy Systems will speak more to this technology. But at the very highest level, what it is, it's using the refrigeration cycle to move heat between the indoor and outdoor environment. And because it's moving heat instead of generating heat, it's 2 to 3 times more efficient than standard electric resistance heat. It kind of works under the same model as a standard air conditioner, but it's reversible, so it can provide heating. And because of some of the advances for the particular technologies that we're supporting through this campaign, like variable speed compressors, it's also more efficient than standard air conditioning. And then ground source heat pumps work under a similar principle, except instead of moving heat to the outdoor air, they're moving heat and using the ground as a heat reservoir. And below a certain depth, the ground is kind of a constant temperature of around 50 degrees year round. And by tapping into that constant temperature, ground source heat pumps are able to provide the most efficient central heating and air conditioning system. And if we go on, a high-level overview of incentives. These installers will talk to you about what particular incentives would apply to your project and how much those would be, but just a quick overview of what incentives are available, starting with air source heat pumps. My organization, the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, has rebates up to $2,500 for air source heat pumps. Then Mass Save, which is the efficiency program through the utilities, also offers incentives of $100 to $300 per indoor head, and those can be added to Mass CEC. We encourage people to take both incentives. Mass Save also offers a 0% interest 7-year loan for these technologies. There's a new incentive, alternative energy credits, which I'll talk more about in a minute, that probably won't be applicable for most of the air source heat pump systems, maybe a few that really go in the whole home direction. Moving on to ground source heat pumps, Mass CEC currently offers an incentive. We're actually in the process this week and next of readjusting that level because in the last budget that Congress just voted on, they brought back the 30% federal tax incentive for ground source heat pumps. So we know whatever we readjust our level to, you'll be looking at a higher incentive for these ground source heat pump systems than there were a couple weeks ago. So we're excited about that development. The heat loan is also available for these systems, that 0% loan. And then these systems are more likely to be whole home and are more likely to qualify for this new alternative energy credits, which again, I'll talk more about in 1 second. First, I did just want to note my organization, the Clean Energy Center, we offer higher incentives than what I just mentioned to customers who are at or below 120% of state median income. And just, you can see the chart here, and one reference point is if it was a family of 4, that would be $132,000. So as you're kind of going through, talking to your installer, let them know if you're interested in this option. And then the next slide, just a very high-level overview of the alternate energy credits. It's similar to the SRECs, or solar renewable energy credits, for those of you who might have PV and are familiar with that kind of incentive. Basically, the utility will pay you for the renewable energy that you generate. They were a little different than the SRECs, though, because it's actually harder to meter thermal credits. What they'll do is they'll look at the system you installed and kind of estimate your production over 10 years and grant you all the credits up front in a lump sum to get that incentive. Moving on, the last thing I kind of want to touch on before I hand it back off is, I talked about how important part of driving down heating is efficiency first, and that is going to be an important part of HeatSmart. We encourage everyone who's thinking about getting a new heating system to start with a home energy audit. It's a prerequisite both for our rebates and for the heat loan. But also it's just great practice that you, through these measures, especially weatherization, air sealing, can reduce the load of your home, potentially up to 20 or 50%, depending on how aggressive you are and your home. There's great incentives through Mass Save, up to 75% of the costs of these measures. And if you take these steps, it can mean that you could install a smaller heating system if you do decide to go down that road. And going on to the next slide, through the HeatSmart Bolton Harvard campaign, we have partnered with a home performance contractor, HomeWorks Energy. They were planning to be here tonight, but the person got the flu, so I'm going to speak on his behalf. They are able to offer a standard Mass Save home energy assessment, but for 100 customers who sign up through HeatSmart Bolton Harvard, they're also going to offer a slightly enhanced version of this home energy assessment. It will include all the same kind of instant saving measures like light bulbs and home evaluation that are part of the standard home energy assessment, but they'll also take a little bit of a closer look at the heating load of your home, provide some more information about both air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps, and then pass any interested people on to our installers here. So if you think you might be interested in a heat pump and want to go through that, you can go sign up to get this enhanced home energy assessment through HomeWorks on the website, which I think is here, and then also we'll see a little bit later tonight. So those are the main points that I want to cover, and I'll turn it over for some next steps.
Thank you, Meg. So it's very important to get a home energy assessment first, because like Meg said, you can reduce the size of the system you need by tightening up your house, adding insulation, things like that. So that can really be a win-win move. You can also, once you have had an assessment, you can implement some of the recommended measures in order to improve the tightness and efficiency of your home. And as Meg said, you can sign up for a visit on our website. Also, both installers here have tables out in the lobby, and they have sign-up sheets so that you can give them their information, and they can take care of signing you up directly. Yesterday, I looked at the list of up to 100 customers would qualify for the enhanced audit. It's called both an audit and an assessment, so either of those words are interchangeable. But there were 60 signed up already so far, so there's still 40 slots left, and if you want to get that enhanced assessment, now is the time to do it. I have to say a little funny thing. One of our people had a word processor who changed the enhanced assessment to enchanted assessment. We all thought that was pretty humorous. Okay, next I'm going to have to switch files here, so give me a minute while I bring up the Boucher charts. Okay, Joel, just let me know when you want to flip the slides, or you can
Okay.
push these arrow buttons if you want.
All right. No, you can flip them for me. That'll be fine. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joel Boucher from Boucher Energy Systems. Like many others, I am also fighting right now getting over a cold. So if I'm having a little bit of trouble with my voice, and if I'm too loud or not loud enough, if you can't hear me, somebody just wave, let me know, and I'll try and compensate for that. Thanks very much for coming. I'm actually pretty excited to see so many people here. I didn't expect this big a crowd on the short timeline we had before we started the program. So Boucher Energy Systems is a family-run company. I grew up in the industry. One of the first jobs I had as a kid was helping to haul and drag solar panels up towards roofs. Today, it's probably a law against that at the age I was doing the net, but it was a great thing to do, to be able to grow up in and around energy efficiency and being green long before it became a thing 30 years plus ago. We've been dedicated to providing that kind of system for people, a system that's energy efficient and easy to run and designed to make the house comfortable for a long period of time. And of course, we complete heating and air conditioning company. We don't just do mini splits, we do traditional systems as well. We have factory certified and trained technicians. We've been doing this type of system for 30 plus years, and we're a factory certified elite diamond dealer with Mitsubishi, and also American Standard Comfort Care dealer as well. This is an installation that we did a year or two back, and it's a pretty good installation in that it shows a single outdoor unit on a precast pad with a stand to help raise it up out of the snow, and attached to it are 3 indoor wall hung heads And that's, you can see from the three separate pieces of piping that are running up the house, attached to each of those, one on the living room, and then 2 bedrooms upstairs. A common question we get is, you know, can you paint those lines to hide them? And yes, you can. They can be painted to match the house. This is a 1970s gambrel house, oil-fired heat, that we put a bunch of systems in, basically converted the entire home. So the customer was concerned with what it was going to cost to cool and heat the house. They really wanted to have air conditioning, and they don't use all the rooms in the house all the time. So they didn't necessarily want a ductwork system that would cool or heat every room every day. Empty nester coupled with a house that they a lot of days use 3 rooms in. So they're looking to have something to offset the fuel cost, something to be greener, and to be quiet operation as well. So this particular system has one single outdoor Mitsubishi unit with multiple heads on it, and then a separate outdoor system with a single head on it. So here's a couple of shots of inside of this home. One on the left in a sort of a spare family room TV room they had. You can see it to the left of the window. And on the right bedroom side unit there, you can see the unit up high on the wall. Also ceiling fan in that shot, which I think is kind of interesting. That's our original cooling system, right? It's a ceiling fan from 100 plus years ago. Another picture of one of the interior bedrooms on the left side. And then on the right is their larger, I'll call it living room, where we can see the units next to the chimney. And on the left-hand side of that picture, you can also see their old through-the-wall window unit, which down the road they actually took that out. So they're very, very happy to get the Mitsubishi unit that's up high on the wall to replace that, because it's so much quieter than the through-the-wall unit. And they were also able to patch that big, huge hole in the house. Megan mentioned, and so did Tony, about it's important to have the energy estimate and tighten the house up. Well, that big window unit that's cut through the wall, that's a huge, drafty, leaky hole. So by being able to close that up, that really helped tighten that room up too. There's another shot from the outside of that house. Showing the line hide, the white piece on the right, which he did actually paint to match later on. That's designed to protect the piping and make everything look a lot neater on the outside of the house. Refrigerant piping, electrical wiring is inside of that. This particular unit was some years ago, so it's sitting on a concrete block, not the higher raised snow stand. That was twofold. Part of that was they wanted to keep it lower to the ground. Their intent was to not run the unit when there was a lot of snow, use it more in the shoulder seasons. This is the unit for the family room in that home. You see the piping kind of tucked behind the downspouts. It was a bit complicated because of the gutter arrangement on the house. And in the yellow circle on the outside of the house, it shows an outdoor wall plug. And on a lot of installations, if you don't have an outdoor plug somewhat near to the unit, that's something that on a lot of houses we would have to add. It's required to have an outdoor plug within 25 feet of an air conditioning system or heat pump type system. Here's 2 more shots of that piping, which was pretty difficult on this house to tuck in behind the gutters and then get up the roof line to the sidewall of the house. So we were able to fulfill what the customer was looking for, which was quick, neat, and fast to put in. No ductwork was needed in the house. They were able to get pretty much all the house heated and cooled, and they have individual thermostats over each room. And by doing that, they can really offset how much oil they're using, which, of course, the more of that oil we offset, the lower we can make the carbon footprint too. This is just a couple of sample system prices that we've put together for the heat loan program, which is substantially discounted compared to what we would normally do. The left-hand one shows a multi-head system, with multiple indoor heads. The right-hand side would be a single indoor head only. And after the rebates from Mass CEC, you know, the one on the left there with the heat loan program through Mass Save, gets that cost down to about $150 a month. Go on to the next one. And I think that's really important, the Mass Save loan, to realize how powerful that is. It's not in this presentation, but the other day I was just at a young mom's house. She has a condo with old heat pumps in it. Nothing works properly. And you know, her electric bill was about $1,000 last month. I think we can easily cut that in half. We could have probably dropped that to maybe $500 by upgrading her equipment. And one of the comments she made to me was, well, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to afford doing this. Well, that Mass Save loan allows her to do that, because the money that she was paying to the utility will easily, the savings is going to easily for her cover what that payment on the loan is going to be. The house that we just are showing right here is a house that has ductwork in it. So instead of the wall hung type units, this is an existing home. It's a large expanded cape. I think it's about 2,800 square feet. I had one oil-fired heating system in it and one zone. So the customer wanted to have more zoning. They wanted to get rid of the oil tanks in the basement, and they really wanted to try and do something, you know, reasonable that would make the house greener and more energy efficient. So take a look at that. So the existing system on the left-hand side, 18-year-old forced hot air furnace, only one zone for the whole house, very uncomfortable upstairs. Two older AC units, that's right, two older AC units and a couple of different electric hot water heaters in the house. So we can show you what we did with that. So we installed some variable speed, high efficiency heat pumps, along with matching air handlers inside from American Standard, and then a Viessmann gas condensing boiler running on propane, and a Viessmann high efficiency water heater. And I'll show you some slides of what that looks like. So the blue arrow there is pointing at the air handler. That took the place of the big old oil-fired furnace. So the nice thing with that is there's no combustion taking place inside that. So it's very, very clean. It just has a blower in it and the coils for the heat pump. We'll go on to the next one. The silver tank in the front took the place of both of those electric hot water heaters. It's a very high efficiency, extremely well insulated, indirect fired tank. So again, there's no combustion taking place in there. It's like a big thermos holding the hot water for the house. Next one. And the next is, you can see it there in the background, that's a high efficiency gas fired boiler. If you have a boiler in your house right now, you're probably thinking of a giant thing taking up half the basement. In that house, that's about the size of a suitcase hanging on the wall. It's very quiet. And it's a modulating and condensing gas-fired boiler. So this, what we've put together here, is basically a hybrid system. This is the sort of the Prius, if you will, of heating systems. I'll go on to the next one. We increased the size of the ductwork on this house because the ducts were too small on the return side for the system to function well. So what's happening here is the heat pumps are doing some of the work. On this particular house with the ductwork they had, when it's super, super cold out, it'd be hard for the heat pump to do the job unless we replaced all of the ductwork. So we'll go on the next one. So now outside where the two AC systems were, we have two high efficiency variable speed heat pumps. So in this home, when the heat turns on, these heat pumps outside run first, and the gas-fired boiler inside does not run. Only when the heat pumps outside cannot make enough heat when it gets extremely cold or the weather's really bad and really snowy possibly, then the boiler inside is going to turn on. And since they're variable speed, they're constantly adjusting how fast they go to the needs of the house. The control for that is this thermostat, which is super sophisticated. I like it a lot because you can see on here how much the systems have run, how fast the compressors are going, and you can track a tremendous amount of data for people who are into that. I went there a day after we started the system, and the first thing they said to me was, I can't believe how comfortable the house is because the heat doesn't turn on and off all the time. We took a look at the thermostat, and from the previous day, the system had run 18 hours without stopping. So basically, I think since we started up the night before, that system probably never stopped running. But at a very, very slow speed with a very constant amount of heat going into the house, makes the house very comfortable and also extremely energy efficient. So they checked off all the boxes. They improved the comfort dramatically. It was the first thing that they said to me. They were very quiet, much quieter than their old oil system. And now they have two zones. They have a zone for upstairs, which they never had before. So the bedrooms are finally warm. Got rid of the big oil tanks in the basement. It's much quieter than the old system, and get rid of the large boiler. It's just a small little gas-fired boiler there now. This is a sample for people who have ductwork in the house and they were going to want to do maybe a ducted heat pump. Here's a couple samples of pricing. We have this in the handouts as well. Just a couple of slides showing some of the mass save rebates that are available. So next steps would be to, if you're interested, you can see us at the tables outside afterwards. Scheduling the audit, very important to have that done. Schedule a site visit with us. You can do that tonight if you like. And then we'll work on figuring out what's going to work best for you and your particular needs in your house. And we can start to schedule the work for everybody.
Thank you, Joel. Oh, did you?
Oh, yes. Sorry. So the pricing, because that's something that's a bit different with this program, with the pilot that Meg mentioned. We've set pricing kind of fixed on 15 of the most common systems, significantly percentage-wise below our regular install costs. Both the ducted and the mini split type options are available. If you had some other need, like an old boiler or heating system, we can certainly take a look at those as well. And we have not built into that standardized pricing the rebates that you'll get back from Mass Save or CEC. It's a couple of sheets that are in the handout. We'll just skip over those just for time. And again, we can do all different types of regular heat and AC systems if you had a question about that as well. And tonight, we got the big green coupon here for everybody who came. Generally, any heating or air conditioning system has to be maintained every year. A heat pump is no different. It does need to be maintained every year, just like an oil or gas system. For those who sign up for an audit tonight, we're going to include that first year for free, but just for the people who showed up tonight, because we appreciate all you guys that actually made the effort to come out, so thank you very much.
So first I want to introduce my wife Nancy, who's sitting over there. You want to wave to everybody? She's put up with this energy nerdiness here for 4 decades now. But our house, we built it in 1978. We designed it to be as tight as it could be. You know, at the time, we used extra insulation, triple windows. We aimed at true south. We couldn't afford solar then. It would have cost $1 million. It was used mainly in outer space at the time, and just wasn't developed for commercial use yet. And we put in some provisions for the future. So it worked pretty well. We have forced hot air with oil, all one zone. We used about 345 gallons per year for a long time. In '85, we put in drain back solar hot water. There were many state and federal incentives at the time. We took advantage of those, and that worked for many decades. It paid itself back many times over. And in 2000, we added a central air conditioning. We had originally designed the ducts to be adequate for that. Then in 2013, we made the big move after I retired from Raytheon. We replaced the solar hot water with PV solar, 33 panels, 8,415 watts, and that's paid itself back already. In 2014, we found that, well, the solar wasn't quite zeroing our energy bills, so from National Grid. So we instituted an energy conservation campaign using a number of different techniques and managed to reduce our consumption by 32%, which is quite a bit. And one of the main ways of doing that was the heat pump hot water tank that I'll talk about later. We use a variable speed pull pump and remedying all of the vampire loads throughout the house, things like that. And after that, we had years of $0 electric bills from National Grid. Then in 2015, we decided, well, you know, this old oil furnace down the basement, it's kind of noisy and smelly, and gee, it sure would be nice to get rid of that thing completely. And so I did a little back of the envelope calculations and predicted that we would need to add more solar panels in order to keep the $0 electric bills if we went to heat pumps. I looked at both air source and ground source at the time. And we went ahead and got more solar panels. This was under the most recent Solarized Mass Bolton program, which many of you participated in. Thank you for that. We added more. Plus, we added one extra panel here that's off-grid. It actually charges up a battery that runs the attic ventilator and emergency lighting. Then we replaced the old air conditioning and F8 forced-side air oil furnace with a 3-ton Bryant ducted air source heat pump. And you can see the outdoor unit there. And we gave it a little awning here to keep the snow off. And since then, we have a dog, and we built a fenced-in area for a run, so that's shared now with the chocolate lab. And then that worked. We continued the 0 electric bills through 2017. However, we ran into a little glitch around Christmas when we had the big snow, and then the weeks and weeks of record cold, 100-year record cold, because the panels didn't shed as they you can see nicely here, they usually shed the snow almost immediately, but in that case they stayed covered for weeks, and then it really crimped the production. Meanwhile, the temperature was so cold that the heat pump had to really work hard in order to heat the house, so we did end up with a couple of electric bills. It's going back down now, but. So here's our central ducted air system. We had an old highboy furnace here that's replaced by the air handler. The returns come in here at the bottom. It goes through a filter, then the A coil. There's a 2-stage resistive heater, controls the blower, and it goes back up into the supply plenums. The central ducted heat pumps have been widely used in the South, but they ran into some cold weather shortfalls up here and kind of got a black eye. So many people have a bad impression of the old heat pumps because of that. But now, the same techniques that makes mini splits work so well are like variable speed motors, compressors, fans, blowers, are being incorporated into the newer central units. So I went to what they call the NEEP list, and it's a list of air conditioning units that are particularly well suited for cold weather performance. And using the HSPF, I'm not going to read the definition here, but it's kind of like a gas mileage sticker on your car. You know, your mileage may vary. But it's a guide. I mean, it's something you can compare one system against another. You can see it even came with the energy guide yellow tag. And for that, we had a mass save rebate, $500. And then there was also an early replacement rebate that we took advantage of at the time. I think that's still available as well. And it has not quite as sophisticated as the one you showed, Joel, but it has a app that you can run on a PC or phones that gives you the ability to set temperatures, change settings, look at what's going on. And great for the engineer, it can give you data to record. And so it gives you 2 days worth of data for how much energy is used for all the different things like heating, cooling, electric heat, or even reheat if you have an active ventilation system. So the engineer in me, I kept data, I still do every day. I record all these parameters into a spreadsheet. And by the way, it has the ability to do setbacks, you know, programming different temperatures at different times of the day, but it's been recommended by almost everybody that I've talked to not to try to do that with heat pumps, because it takes long for them to recover and you lose more than you gain. But for longer trips, like when you're gone for days, We do lower the temperature, but with the remote control, we can, in the car with the cell phone, I can turn it up when we're 100 miles away or so, and it'll be fine when we get home. So some of the data is shown here. This plot shows 15 months of data, and it shows versus outside air temperature. There's 3 curves here. The blue ones, this is for air conditioning, which is really a pretty easy job for these units. They kind of easily handle the air conditioning load. The next one is the green dots, and these are heat pump heating power consumption. And as you would expect, as it gets colder, it takes more and more energy to cool the air. And then this begins to actually taper off the really cold temperatures, but that's because we burn more wood in those cases. So that's why that really tapers off there. The big surprise to us here was how much it uses for defrosting, for resistance heating. It has the resistive heating elements. They're only 9 kilowatts, but it has to turn those on while it's defrosting because it reverses. It turns itself back into an air conditioner to heat up the outdoor coil to melt the ice off. But if you didn't counteract that with the resistive heating, then you'd have cold drafts in the house. So it's kind of a trade-off. But it used like 30% as much power for resistive heating as it did for heat pump heating. But even so, it achieved some decent overall performance, a seasonal COP of 2.7, which is not too bad. And I'm working with Brian to tune it up a little better. They have some algorithms. You can see a lot of these red points here are at really pretty high temperatures. So it shouldn't be wasting energy there. So we can get rid of those, and it'll work much better. And then we have also a mini split in the basement. Here's the indoor unit, the outdoor unit, which is on a pad. We already had the pad there because that's where our oil tank used to be. So we mounted one of these 9 kilowatt outdoor units there, and there's room for another one if we ever decide to expand. I don't take data on this one a lot because it's intermittently used. Nancy uses it when she's quilting down the basement. And on that, we had the mass save rebate of $500, and the CEC rebate was $625. The last chart I have is about heat pump hot water. This is a remnant of our old solar hot water tank. This looks the same one like you had in your picture, Joel.
There's a lot of those out there.
Big one, yeah, 115 gallons. And it never did quit working. I mean, it lasted 30 years. It began to develop a little leak around one of the seals, but it just got to be time to replace it. The solar part, the panels on the roof gradually degraded and didn't work so well. They had the reflective coating behind the vacuum tubes. So we use it just as a resistance water heater. And you can see it was using like 8 kilowatt hours per day. On some days when there are extra people, like my son and his family from Ohio, it would double. And then other days when nobody's around, it would cut in half. So that continued. And then we got this ATI 66 all stainless steel heat pump hot water tank. And it has a backup electric element, but that only came on the first day when it had to heat up the whole tank of cold water. And after that, it's been all heat pump. And you can see that it greatly reduced the power consumption. Still has the peaks and valleys, but overall the COP was about 2.65. And we saved almost 5 kilowatt hours per day, or $400 a year, probably even more now with the rates going up. So, and as a side benefit, it also dehumidifies the basement, so you don't need to use the dehumidifier anymore. We vent it outside in the winter because there's no need to bring in more cool, dry air, but in the summer it exhausts into the basement. So for that, there's still a mass save rebate of $750, and we think this is a good investment to save energy. Now we're going to go to Bill Wenzel, and I think Bill, you're going to do this without slides. Can you speak?
Yeah.
I'm Bill Wenzel, Bill Wenzel Heating and Air Conditioning. I've been doing I've been doing heating and air conditioning for 43 years. My son is the third generation in the heating business. I've been doing geothermals for 21 years. What got me into it is my father used to be in the oil business. And in the 60s, I can remember sitting in the oil truck with him, and he had a little book to price out the oil. And I can remember him saying we were selling oil for 16 cents a gallon. And I can remember my father saying, this book goes to 99 cents a gallon, it'll never get there. And this was in the 60s. So after about 20 years of selling oil with my father, I went into the geothermal business. I've never stopped since. That's all I do is geothermal heating. I have over 1,000 accounts with Geo. We service, we take over a lot of installs that other people have done for service. I've got 3 guys on the team that have associate's degree in heating and air conditioning. And the best thing with geothermal is you have no fuel bill if you go with solar. It's 50% more efficient than any other heating out there.
And it doesn't have to defrost like the air source.
It doesn't have to defrost like air source. You don't have any outdoor condensers to clean or listen to, especially in the winter when they're ramping up really high. And with the tax credits of 30%, the Mass CEC up to 17.5, 3,500 a ton right now, but I think they're going to drop it. And then the renewable energy credits, it makes it a real easy sell. Normally the main extra cost for geothermal is the boreholes, but with all of that money that they're helping us with, it makes it much more affordable. The easiest systems are the ducted systems. If you have ductwork in the house, we can pretty much convert it fairly easy. We can do forced hot water systems, but most of the systems run around 120 degrees. So you'd have to convert your baseboard to a higher temperature baseboard, or get a higher output heat pump that will convert the water in the ground to water inside. They do make higher temperature machines, but usually the COP of those machines drops as the higher the temperature goes up. We do in-house manual J's. The CEC requires roughly 1 degree outdoor temperature, and below 1 degree we supplement with electric heat. That's where usually the crossover point is for the efficiency. And I work with Roger Skillings. He does all of our drilling, the boreholes, either closed loop or open loop. We can use water wells or the closed loop boreholes on the ground with the U-bends. And I mean, Roger can tell you more about the drilling end of it, and we have a slide show also.
So that's kind of an overview of what geothermal is. That particular one that we did was a standing column well, and I have a few slides to show you what the difference is between the standing column and the closed loop. But I will say in the area here in Harvard and Bolton, you have a lot of iron. I'm sure you have iron in you have softeners and you have iron filters. And we do a lot of wells in this area, so we know we do a lot of water treatment on the iron. Well, iron gums up things on these heat pumps, just like calcium does on a boiler. You know, you have calcium and it collects to the boiler, and it ruins the boilers when they superheat the pipe. So we really recommend a closed loop system most of the time around here. The most efficient systems are the standing columns when the water level in the ground is very high, and you're over towards Bolton Flats where the levels are very high over there, and we don't have to lift the water very far out of the well into the heat pump, good quality water. It is the most efficient system that we can put in. And if you go online, you can learn a little bit about standing column versus closed loop. But when we have to lift the water any distance, and you go over towards the Bear Hill Road area over that way, the water levels are a little bit lower in a lot of places. Well, we're paying that penalty to lift the water from there. And the iron levels over there are high. So we usually recommend you to do the closed loops. The closed loop, we control the water that's in the well, in the pipes, and it's always the same water. It's already controlled, it doesn't have iron in it, and it will last for years and years and years and years. The pump penalty is not there because it's just a circulating pump, just like on your forced hot water systems in the house. You just have these little circulators. So that's the way Bill would put the circulator on those type of systems.
Sorry, I can't find the charts.
You can't find that one?
Can you give me a memory stick?
Oh, okay.
So while you're doing that, we have a lot of people asking about the ledge around here, and so you might want to say why that's not as big of a problem as some people might think.
Right. Well, well drillers like ledge, believe it or not, because once we get in ledge, we don't need pipe, and we can drill pretty fast in ledge, believe it or not. But, you know, when you're digging trenches and you're putting in pipes and trenches, yes, ledge can be sometimes an issue getting from the boreholes or the well, whatever it is, to the house. But usually we find a way. We usually can find a way. On these systems, we'll super insulate the lines going into the house if they're down 3 feet and not the 4 or 5 feet. We like to see them 5 feet down. This is a 2014.
Yeah.
The presentation 2014. Yep. So there we are. And the next slide. Keep going. This is the wrong one. There's another one.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
The one that says updated today. I think it's right below it. Yeah, that one there.
All right.
So the ledge becomes less of a problem. I'm not saying it's never a problem. Sometimes boulders are a very problem, and some of you have boulders around, and we dig these trenches and boulders. What do we do with them? So we usually ask, where can we make an ornament for you? Because you don't want to put the boulders back in the ground. But usually, we always find a way. And I can usually tell when I do a site survey, if I see outcroppings around, I can usually tell what ledge is going to be a problem, and we'll let you know right away on ledge. Horizontal loops are, it's not coming out up
No,
there.
it's not. It's crashed.
Horizontal loops are less expensive. If you look at the price chart, you'll see the price chart makes it look like it's higher in price. Well, the problem with horizontal is you will dig sometimes for some houses around with half the size of this room that we're here, or even the size of this room, a hole that's 5-6 feet deep to put in pipes. Well, again, remember what I said about boulders and ledge. Not every place is that really practical to do, and ruining a whole yard, it gets a little tough. But again, if you're over towards the flatter areas, towards the Bolton flats, towards Lancaster that way, then you can get into spots where horizontals are absolutely, positively need to be in a wet environment. Now, I don't mean that they're in the water table, that they're in an environment that has some water in it. In a dry situation, we could have to put in 1,600 feet of pipe for 1 ton of load. In other words, 12,000 BTUs. But if you're in a wet environment, I could put in 600 feet of pipe. So it does have a lot to do with the geology of the ground around you, whether horizontal is a good application or not. So again, site visits help with that, but horizontal in the right place is the least expensive to put in, but it will make more of a mess. We get another one.
So I can go ahead and read a letter from a customer of Bill Wenzel, and I'm assuming also Roger helped out with this install. A person in Bolton sent this letter in about their experience. Person's name is Tim Bush in Bolton. Hello, Bolton and Harvard residents. I'm sorry I couldn't be here in person this evening, but it is still my pleasure to endorse geothermal heating and cooling. As an efficient and effective option, I will say that it is, without a doubt, the best choice, one I am glad I made. With the help of Bill Wenzel, I installed a ground source heat pump for an 8-ton forced air heating and cooling system in 2014. Now into my 4th heating season, it is an easy endorsement. There are many resources, especially Bill, to help you better understand the system, but the short of it is that the same unit provides heating and cooling for your home. Water from a ground well is used for heat exchange within the unit to provide very efficient hot or cool air. The unit and the well pump are powered by your electricity. The primary thing that I think most people are interested in is the cost of operation. The system has been significantly less expensive for me than my previous oil burner, which only provided heat. The cost associated with operation is electricity. Second to that, I would guess, is comfort. Something that I've noticed with my system is the consistency of temperature. Rather than intense periods of very hot or very cold air being circulated on and off throughout the day and fluctuating, I enjoy a constant low flow of mild air or air that we regulate. The temperature is stable and quite consistent throughout the house. I have found my geothermal system to be very cost effective, very comfortable, and relatively low maintenance. I would be hard pressed to consider a house without it now that I have lived with it for a few years. It's a big decision, but if you are already seriously considering a change, this is the right one. Please let me know if I can be of further assistance. I am happy to speak with anyone and can easily be reached through email. And we have Tim's email, I can read it, or it's tcbush02@gmail.com. But I expect that we'll have Mr. Bush come to Harvard, and we also have a Harvard resident who had a system installed by the Wenzel. Renee Roy is here, just back from Florida. And Renee, do you want to say anything about your system, or? Okay.
Yes, my name is Renee Roy. I used to live on West Bear Hill in Harvard, and back in 2008, my original heating and cooling system was on its way out. So I looked at the different options, and the best option for us was the geothermal heating and cooling system. At the time, I connected with, I believe it was Water Energy Distributors, and they designed the system, and they pointed to Bill as the installer. Then we needed a 600-foot well, and the thing that I found with this whole process was the team. The three-member team was the drilling outfit, the Water Energy Distributors, and Bill Wenzel as the installer. So they put in a system. At that point, I was able to eliminate my oil bill, which was running around $2,500 a year, and my electric bill went up a little bit, but all in all, I was very satisfied with it. The thing that I liked about Bill was that his people were very talented, fun to be with, and they cleaned up their mess every night after they finished working. which meant a lot to us because we were living in the house at the time. Unfortunately, we sold a house about 4 years ago, so we're no longer in the house. But I've spoken with the people who bought it, and they're still happy with it. For us, it was a good move, and I think that you will be happy with a geothermal system.
So you already know, we're using the earth to heat and cool the house. We're moving the energy from the earth and then back from your house back to the earth, back and forth. Next one. It works year-round. Some people think that in the wintertime it's not going to keep up. It works year-round. And then again, in the summertime, you don't have to, it works in the summertime. And for some that really don't understand what a heat pump is, it's a refrigerator. The refrigerator is taking the heat out of the inside of the refrigerator and it's putting it into your house. That's all it's doing. That is a heat pump. It's the compressor, it's the gas that is moving that energy, and that's just a vehicle. What that is the gas is a vehicle to move the energy. Next one. So, like he said, there is 3 parts of that are very important to the whole system. Is design, but the building connection, meaning the heat pump, the ground loop, and the delivery system, and the ductwork. It's very important. So we play a big part in Bill's world, is that we're providing the energy for the heat pump. And all it is we're taking the energy out of the ground and we're putting the energy into the water that moves into the heat pump. Then the heat pump says, I'm going to take that energy, put it into the gas, and then the ductwork says, I'm going to take the energy and put it into the house. And that's how the energy moves. Next. So it is approximately 50 degrees. Some of the holes that we drill are a little warmer, some a little bit cooler, but usually in that 50-degree range. So you have the HVAC, the HVAC contractor, like Bill and the Bouchers, they take care of all the inside work. And there is, like you've already seen, that little animation that this old house shows. It's the same thing. It's moving the energy from either from air on like the air source or from the ground. Next. And here we are. We're taking it out of the ground and we're putting it into the house. I'm sorry. We're putting the cool into, this is the air conditioning? Yeah, this is the cooling mode. So you can see the cooler water is coming out of the ground and it's putting the hotter water back in. Next. And this is going the other way where it's taking the warmer water and putting the cooler water back in. Next. And this is a closed loop system. I know it shows a commercial building, but it doesn't matter. It's a house or a commercial building. We do them for schools. We do them for all kinds of different buildings. Most houses will have usually 2 loops, sometimes 3, but 2 loops is pretty common. 2 boreholes, we call it. Next. That's what the piping that goes in the ground. They call that the U-bend, and that's an 1.25 inch pipe that goes down into those holes. Next. Then we use this pump, then we pump a grout down, which is sealant around the pipes so that after we drill the holes, there's no water moving in the ground. We seal it all up, and we need that to have the good conductivity to move the energy from the borehole through the borehole into the pipe and into the water, because we're trying to move energy. Next. And that's the grout that's coming out of the hole. We fill it with it's a bentonite. Well, it used to be a bentonite sand mix, and now we're using a bentonite graphite mix because the graphite has better conductivity. And this is what it looks like in the ground when we pipe them all together. We just fuse, everything in the ground is fused, so that way there we don't have leaks. There's no mechanical fittings at all in the ground. And this is all closed loop we're showing. Next. And that's like I said, if you wanted a horizontal, now, you know, this is a good sized system, but, you know, I think that house was like 3,500, 4,000 square feet, and you could see, whoa, that's a lot of digging.
Where's all the rocks?
Yeah. And then the open system, which is commonly called the standing column, what that is that we're taking the water out of a traditional well, and we're moving it through the heat pump and putting it back into that well. It's just circulating the water. These have the best, again, conductivity rating, because why? We're not paying a penalty to go through the grout, to go through the pipe and then into the water. It's directly to the wall. The problem is, like I said, sometimes is the quality of the water becomes difficult. But if I'm over in Weston, Mass, or if I'm in Wayland and some of those areas, beautiful quality of water over that way. Next. And that what a system like that looks like in the basement. Looks like a traditional water well, but it has a few more controls on it in the basement. But very clean, very neat. Next. And yes, the easiest system and most economical system is on new construction, no doubt about it. It's always harder to do retros. Next. And types of heating systems that they do with this, you can do baseboard like Bill said, but it's much more difficult because a lot of the baseboard was put in based on 180-degree water temperature, and the heat pumps just don't go that high. Next. Putting it on a forced hot air system, it's the easiest as long as the ductwork is properly sized. So you can accommodate a smaller heat pump if you just go through the energy system and you lower your BTUs in the house, which will lower the heat pump size, which will lower the airflow that you need into the house. So it's insulating the house a lot of times will overcome the fact that the ductwork is too small. And backup heat isn't usually necessary. I know Bill had said that, you know, that they electric heat comes on at a certain temperature, but I'll tell you, this year at 20 below zero, there's a if you go online, it's called ground energy source. You can see live operations of geothermal systems around New England. And I see most of them still, even at that 20 degrees, was still putting out the heat, and they were still chugging along, and a lot of them didn't run the electric heat. So they you know, sometimes the manual J that they do, they want to cover themselves, so they're a little, you know, they want to be careful with that manual J. So they oversize a little bit just because everybody's a little cautious about it. Or if you have on the low level of say a 5-ton, 60,000 BTUs, they will have a 60,000 BTU heat pump, but really the load was 51,000. So there is some fudge factor there. So they can't get away with the 48,000, but they can get away with the 60,000, but the 60,000 will run a little bit, it'll accommodate it in the cold weather. Next. Common concerns is proper sizing. Again, I went over that. The damage to the property for us. Well, anybody who's seen a well rig, yeah, we're big, no doubt about it. And yes, we have to be considerate of getting in your property and putting a well rig over a driveway and making a mess, in plain language. But you know, we've done thousands of these, and we have a pretty good handle on it. And you know, they are less expensive to run.
50% less.
Next. Then the sizing, I went over that. Next. And I don't want to go over too long because it looks like it's 8:30. So, some of the numbers that go on here, you can see, 3,000 square foot, 6-ton system, $42,000. Those are, you have your pricing, but you can see how just the tax credit, brings that system down, and now you have the CEC program. You can get a system for pretty good deal.
In
Yeah.
Bolton, we do have at least one new construction project interested in that.
That's another thing too, is getting the building permits.
And next,
All right, contact all.
and common myths, I went over that. Next. Nope, keep going. Keep going. And who to call? You're calling, when you do a closed loop system, you're always going to call the HVAC contractor, because once I'm done, I'm done. Everything is inside. The nice thing about it is that everything is inside on closed loop. The circulator pump's inside, the heat pump's inside, so it's 20 below zero or 20 degrees out, and they have to do something, it's inside. That's the only again, the other downside to a standing column with the open, if I have a well pump that goes out, it's 20 below zero, and it gets a little difficult pulling a pump out of the ground.
4 feet of snow.
With snow and everything else. So yes, the closed loops really are attractive that way. That's it.
All right, so I think what we're going to do now is have a question and answer panel. In case, I don't know if anyone has to get going, it is 8:30. If you do have to leave now and wanted to sign up, I was wondering if maybe Jane and Steve. So we have representatives from Bill Wenzel, Heating and AC, and Boucher Energy Systems. They're going to be out at their table, so if you do have to get going at any point, you can just go, and on your way out, talk to either or both of them, and they can sign you up for a home visit today if you're interested. Or you can take more information if you want to think about it a little bit longer. But in the meantime, I think we'll take some questions. I would ask if you have a general question, we'll ask people to go to the mics. Just say your name and which of us you have the question for. If it's a more specific question about your specific home, we will all then stick around and go out into the tables and talk. So if you want to talk one-on-one, you can wait till that time. But if you have a more general question, I'll just ask people to line up at either of the mics, and we'll alternate. Just say your name and who you have a question for. We have to do the mics so that the cameras can hear everyone.
I'd just like to add that if anyone else already has either an air source or a ground source heat pump that they'd like to share some of their findings with us, we'd appreciate hearing about that too during the questions and answers.
That'd be great.
Good. We don't have hands.
So you can go ahead if you want to just say your name and which of us you have the question for.
Okay, my name is Peter Ross. I live on North Road in Bolton. Got a question for Roger relative to the well. You called about the standing column and the closed loop system. Is the well drilling cost the same to start with? Is it the same diameter well hole, whether you put 2 pipes down or just 1 pipe down? And the second question is, how does the well placement on the property, on the lot, jive with the Board of Health requirements with your domestic well and your septic system? Because it's pretty strict for domestic consumption. Can this well go anywhere on the property?
The closed loop can be within 25 feet of the septic system, 50 feet from a drinking water well. Because they are sealed with that grout, it's a clay, so they allow it within those distances from the tube. Both wells are 6-inch diameter, and we could drill a small hole for the closed loop, but the speed and the economics of drilling a 6-inch well, believe it or not, is cheaper than drilling a 5-inch well. But they're both the same diameter. hole.
Okay, so no difference in the drilling cost between the two. So
The cost is a little cheaper depending on, the cost for standing column or open is cheaper because it's less feet per ton. In other words, I can get more out of a standing column well, they call it feet per ton, which is, standing column is about 100 feet per ton, roughly. A closed loop is 150 feet per ton. So the efficiency there of the shorter hole is definitely better than what it is. So consequently, the standing columns become more economical. Now, still in the standing columns though, I have to put a submersible pump in and all the lines. So by the time you're done, the standing column is a little bit cheaper than the closed loop. But over time, and again, I don't want to put it, I've done a lot of standing columns, but over time, you will have to replace a standing column well pump a lot sooner than you do on a circulator pump. They do not last. Like your well pump in your house, people have them for 20, 25, 30 years. I know I'm pulling them out that old. Well, these pumps in the standing columns are not going to last that long. Your normal household pump runs about 20 minutes a day. These pumps can run 12, 14 hours, 15 hours a day. So they will last in the range of 10 years on a well pump.
Okay, thank you.
Noel Dill from Nashaway Road. 3 different questions, actually. I may think of more, who knows. First, assuming I had a river running through my property, can I put a closed loop and just drop the coils down into the river to get a high efficiency transfer?
Do you own it?
I own the property on either side of it.
Well, you have to go through conservation.
Okay. Second question is, assuming I don't have a river running through it,
Yeah.
but I do have a patch of a land that is somewhat distant from the house, but contiguous in the property. How far from the house can you go with a closed loop system to connect to the interior equipment?
Well, when you start having long distances, we take those distances in consideration because the pipe's buried in the ground. So we will shorten the boreholes up according to the distance going out. Because we do have to watch out for head loss. On the longer we run the pipes, the more head loss we have.
Okay.
So we consider that.
Okay, I'm thinking of a horizontal closed loop system as opposed to boreholes, but
Yep.
the same difference in terms of
Yep, same
calculation. 2.5 question is, in this particular situation, I have to go under a driveway to connect to the house from this patch of land. Is that something that you can bore, or would we have to cut and excavate? And how big are the pipes?
There is boring tools, but you most likely excavate. There's
All
so
right.
much work that goes on, you end up excavating.
Suppose hypothetically that 10 years ago I put a couple of 3-inch conduits 2 feet under the driveway.
How many feet?
2 plus.
Yeah, well, that's the worst place to have 2 feet. So usually it's 6 feet, we will always want under a driveway. So
Okay.
it's 2 feet, too shallow.
Okay. It was not intended for this anyway. Third question is, suppose I wanted a ground source system, but I wanted the room-by-room capabilities of the ductless systems that the guys on the other end of the table are selling. Can I merge those 2 technologies to achieve the efficiencies of the ground source plus the granularity of the ductless system units?
He wants the hybrids. You want a hybrid.
Yeah.
The ground
Hybrid,
source.
not high price, hybrid.
Hybrid.
Yes.
I can,
Yeah.
We can do hybrid geothermal.
Joel has,
yeah, so you were thinking about maybe like the wall head style units? but
yeah.
have them tied to a geothermal type system. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so that's very possible to do that. Mitsubishi makes systems that are capable of doing that. So that you don't have to necessarily have a ducted system, but with the geo, you can do a wall-based type unit as well.
Okay. Now, the wall-based units are not particularly attractive. I understand that some manufacturers provide ceiling recess or wall recess type units. Do you have those units available as well?
Yes, so Mitsubishi makes ceiling recess type units, they make floor standing units and the wall style, with the wall style being the most popular. And they also make some units that can be kind of small little ducted systems that are totally hidden, like a ductwork system, but maybe a ductwork system for only just 1 or 2 rooms, really small, compact type of system. So they make those as well.
Okay.
There
Thank
are
you.
also, I know of one house in Bolton who has geothermal, and he also has a mini split for a separate room, so you can combine the two in different ways.
Yeah, but Mitsubishi doesn't have a geothermal air source with a ductless.
They have a water-to-water setup. They can
Do a water-to-water with chilled, yeah.
Hi, I'm Bruce Leisher from Harvard. Are there applications for that you recommend using for geothermal versus an air-based system? I was trying to understand when you'd be looking at one versus the other.
Well, if you have ducts, it's a lot easier to do a geo. If you don't want ducts, you could do the air source. It's up to you.
And if you so the situation we're in is we have air handlers with ducts that are fed by hot water.
Yeah, chilled water. You can do a chilled water geothermal system also.
They're chilled or hot water.
Chilled or hot.
Yeah,
yes.
So you could do either one.
Yeah. The
Okay.
issue is you'd have to wrap the pipes if you're going to do a chilled system.
Yep.
Yeah, the system you're describing is commonly referred to as a hydro-air type system. Sounds like what you have in your home now, which is what I actually showed on the second part of the slide presentation I did, where you took out the standard just oil hot air system, put in a couple high efficiency heat pumps with a boiler, which is exactly what you have, and you could do it totally geothermal, or you could do it air-based. That potentially either could be done.
We get a show of hands, maybe how many people have ducted system versus forced hot water? So that's consistent, right? Okay. Thank you.
And is there a difference between the two in terms of heating home hot water?
You can get heating home water off of the geothermal with a de-superheater.
Okay.
You're talking domestic hot water?
Yeah, domestic hot water, yes.
So there was a question from someone in Harvard, I don't know if he's here or not, but he owns a pond, and he wanted to know if there's, similar to the river question that came up earlier, can he put loops in the pond?
If he owned the
He owns the
pond,
pond.
yeah, if he owned it, he could put loops in the pond depending upon the depth and the heat load of the building.
Yeah.
Water is a great energy source and sink.
The pond has to be at least 8 feet deep,
8 feet.
and you may own it with conservation.
We have a lot of experience sitting here at the table. We're lucky, and so are you.
So I have it's not really a question, it's more of a quiz. Been looking at electric vehicles, and electric vehicles are very efficient. They don't create any waste heat like fossil fuel. engines do, and so the problem of heating the car in the winter becomes significant. You typically have to give up range to heat the car because you're using resistive heating typically. And most of them do have air conditioning, so the question is why wouldn't you just make that a heat pump so it could work one way in the winter and the other way in the summer? And it turns out that Nissan Leaf actually came out with a system like that just a couple years ago in their electric vehicle. Interesting. You would think that would be obvious. That they
Air source, an air source.
Yeah. Of course, you couldn't do a ground source heat pump.
No, that'd be kind of hard. Long pipe.
I guess
I'm curious also how many people, oh, Tim, go ahead.
Sure, I had one question which showed up in the Boucher slide. It showed a heat pump water heater, and I was wondering if those are going to be included in the program as well, in terms of an option for when looking and evaluating houses for either air source heat pumps, retrofitting of existing hot water heaters with some kind of unit. Is that something that's also going to be part of this program?
So it's not part of the standardized pricing that it's going to be offered through HeatSmart, but Boucher Energy Systems does do heat pump water heaters, so in the same time they come and look at your home for an air source heat pump, they can also give you a quote about a heat pump water heater. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there are rebates from the Mass Save program for that.
$750.
Right, $750 this year, so it's a nice rebate from them. It can also go inside of the Mass Save 0% heat loan as well. But it wasn't built into the HeatSmart program specifically, but certainly we could do it and you could take advantage of those other incentives.
Right, so I think I want to make it clear to people that even when you're doing an assessment, you have the home energy assessment to figure out what your efficiencies are and what your opportunities are. But then when we, either Wenzel or Boucher comes and does an evaluation, they'll look holistically at all your energy consumption. And that might be one of those elements that could be included in addition to air source heat pump for heating and cooling. They could look at the water heating system if it's appropriate. Is that correct? And they could, and you could do a contract. They could do perhaps air source heat pumps for heating and cooling in some rooms, and in addition, at the same time, evaluate and price out an opportunity for a retrofit of an existing, electric hot water heater.
Yeah, that's correct, and they can all be built into one estimate and all wrapped into the same financing program with Mass Save. And you could also, along those same lines with the Mass Save program, you can do, they have great incentives to increase insulation, seal up the house, and that kind of repair can also be wrapped in there, into that program too.
And then one last thing that wasn't covered, although that loan program was mentioned, all these programs are paperwork intensive, and I know a lot of people who participate in them, we value the opportunity to have someone else to do that paperwork for them. Is that something that Wenzel and Boucher are going to do on behalf of the participants in this program?
So for us, we do all the rebate paperwork for you, so you don't have to do it. It can be very painful. Anybody who spends any time, in places like the registry, there's a lot of paperwork and have to dot every I and cross every T, and so we'll do that. And we can do most of the paperwork for the loan. It's a two-part process. One part is to get the project approved through Mass Save. We can do that part for you. And then the second part of that is they run the program and finance it through a bunch of different banks. So you would then have to choose one of the banks and go to the bank to do the financial part of it, which is very easy, people tell me. Some have asked me to go to the bank for them and pretend to be them and do it because they don't want to do it. But legally, I can't do that for them. So that's the one part you have to do yourself, is to go to the bank.
Great, thank you.
David Fay from Harvard. I'm one of the 60 people that signed up for a home energy assessment, and I haven't heard a word from whoever it was that I signed up
Oh.
with. Should I be worried?
Thank you for asking that question. I meant to say that, and I'm sure he would have touched on it in more detail if he hadn't had the flu. So they've just had a little delay in finalizing the protocols because they still want to work through Mass Save, but we're offering this additional piece. So they need to confirm it with Mass Save. So I think their current timeline is they're planning to reach out and schedule those audits probably in a couple weeks. I think March 12th was when they're going to start scheduling and do them after that. So yes, if you're one of those 60 people who's already signed up, they apologize for not reaching out. You should hear from them probably starting that week of March 12th, and they'll schedule them from there.
Without getting up again, 6 weeks ago, I had a home energy assessment. Can I get the add-on part of the assessment? Is that possible, or is that?
So the question, just to make sure everyone can hear it, is that he already had a home energy assessment 6 weeks ago. Would it make sense for him to do this enhanced audit again through Homeworks? Is that possible? Unfortunately, it's not possible because a big part of the kind of the payment for it is through Mass Save, and they require you to do it no more frequently than every 2 years. And I will say it's not going to be that different. I think the kind of the extra information that Homeworks will give you in this enhanced audit, you can also get from either Wenzel or Boucher. They're just very knowledgeable about heat pumps. So I think probably if you've already had the audit, the home energy assessment, it just makes sense to go on and talk to one of these contractors.
Or you can find somebody you know that's signed up and tag along when the audit happens.
If you want to see one in action, you can do that. But yeah.
I thought applied the additional information included heating, BTU assessment and so on.
So they are going to talk a little bit more about the heating load of your home, but both Boucher and Wenzel would ultimately kind of redo that work anyway. There will be a preliminary estimate, and then they'll refine it and really give you a real heat load calculation. So I think in your case, you could skip right to talking to them, and they'll give you a more final built-out heat load calculation for your home. So, some more questions? Sorry, go ahead.
I have a home that's evolved from an all-electric home to a wood stove, and then oil heat, and cogeneration, and air source heat pump, and so on. What I want to do is to start analyzing and measuring what's going on. I need to measure temperatures and electricity power, fuel use, and weather, and all that kind of stuff. Can I buy a home energy management system, or do I have to invent my own?
Yeah, you can.
Invented. How about the second?
No, they have them. Yeah, they have energy management
Do you know
systems.
what the vendors
I don't know what in fact, Mass Save, one of my customers has one. I don't have the name right here, but I can get you the name.
Yeah, if you leave your name, somebody will get you.
Yeah, that's, there's a lot of different ways to do that, depending on the level you want to take it to and what you want to invest. You can start simply with taking some electrical amperage readings on equipment, all the way up to, there's a group that's hired by the utility that has actually put tracking and telemetry on, I know on some of the systems that we've installed, and they're tracking it for the utilities, and they're doing it all wirelessly through the internet, and tracking the fossil fuel systems, how much they run, how much all the zones run, how much the mini split systems run. So you can kind of go crazy doing that sometimes. You can get as much information as you want, depending on what you want to invest in that type of system.
All right.
David Fay from Harvard again. Is this on? Yeah. Eric invited anyone that wanted to talk about air source heat pumps in their own house to make a few comments, so I'll take the bait. About 3 years ago, I got an air source heat pump to heat just a kitchen and dining area. It's only part of the house, but it's the house that faces the west wind, and it was always pretty cold. And besides, we had a furnace for that part of the house that was 45 years old, forced air furnace, and it was really kind of on its last legs. So we got an air source heat pump, not from Boucher, but from one of the losers who didn't get this, program. I won't say who it was, but they did a good job installing the air source heat pump. But they never did a manual J, which, if people are not familiar with that, it's a calculation of the heat loss of the part of the house that's going to be supplied with by the air source heat pump. It's an extra step and it requires some sophistication. And instead, the installer just sat down with me at the kitchen table and said, I think you need a 18,000 BTU Mitsubishi. I said, aren't you going to do a manual J? He says, no, we've got lots of experience. I think 18,000 would be fine. So that's what they put in, replacing a 72,000 BTU forced air furnace. And you might think that that maybe is way too little, 18,000 BTU, but you have to take into account the fact that it had no ducts. So the old system had ducts that were pretty leaky, and you lost a lot of heat that way. So we were heating the basement a lot, which we didn't really need to do. So, you know, I could think of reasons why that 18,000 might be okay. So we got the system installed, and we had always set our furnace, our thermostat to 65 degrees with the forced air furnace. And so we naturally set the heat pump to 65 degrees. And my wife was freezing, absolutely freezing. And she let me know about that. And this went on for a while, and I said, well, you'll get used to it. And she didn't. It's also, I should say, as an aside here, that an air source heat pump puts out a very different kind of heat than a forced air furnace. And the difference is that it puts out constant heat, more or less constant heat, but at a much lower temperature than a regular oil-fired furnace. Oil-fired furnace gives you a blast of hot air that's really hot, and then it shuts off, and it waits for the temperature to drop, and then it comes on again. And apparently my wife was really liking that, the hot air that came out of the furnace. I think her chair was closer to the duct outlet. So it took some getting used to, and the way I finally solved the problem was by turning up the thermostat for the air source heat pump to 68, and that seemed to make it fine for her. So there was a little bit of, thermostat wars going on there for a while, but in the end we found something we were both happy with. Another thing that I was I didn't quite expect with the air source heat pump was I expected to save money. I'm one of those people that keeps, real careful track of all my energy expenditures and the costs and so forth. And I really thought that I would save energy and save money with an air source heat pump. But in actual fact, I did save energy quite a bit, but I didn't save any money. And the reason is that just about the same time that I put in the air source heat pump, the cost of electricity went up and the cost of oil went down. So, that's a temporary thing, I think. But it worked out. It was just about break even in terms of my energy costs. So I didn't really save any money, but I did save a fair amount of energy if you just, in other words, my carbon footprint went down by quite a bit. What else is there to say? Otherwise, we've been very happy. We actually got it just for heat. We never had air conditioning before, and that's been a very pleasant surprise. We actually like air conditioning much more than I ever expected. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that. I expected really not to use the air source heat pump at all in the summertime, but in fact, we use it. And that does increase our electric bill a little bit over what I had expected, but not a lot. It really cools that section of the house remarkably well. Whereas the heat the heat side of things has taken a little bit of adjusting. The cooling side took no adjusting at all. It was just great from day one. I have no noise problems. It's outside of the room that's being, obviously outside the room that's being heated and cooled. I can never hear the pump at all, the compressor outside, but then my hearing's not great anyway, so that's not been a problem. Some people hate the look of the thing on the wall. I didn't even notice it after the first week. I guess that's pretty much my experience. If anybody has any questions about air source heat pumps in terms of, like day-to-day living with it, I'd be happy to
Thank you, David.
answer people's questions.
Before people leave, I wanted to get a sense of how many people would be interested in either, well, let's just say first, an air source heat, house tour. If you wanted to see, you can see the photos, but we're thinking of actually scheduling some house tours with a house that either has been done by the installer or just a good house, to maybe Tony's house in Bolton. How many people would want to do that for an air source system? Okay, how about a couple? All right. So maybe we should make sure we get in touch with you and we'll think about that. And then for ground sources, there probably are, well, we have at least one in Harvard. Somebody is doing one in Bolton, we think, fairly soon. But if we were to arrange for a ground source tour, would that be of interest to anybody? Okay.
Actually,
Maybe one or two?
the house at the corner of Mechanic Street and 117, I just learned just yesterday, because Al arranged for us to set up our sign on their property.
Oh, okay.
It turns out they have a geothermal system there with four wells.
So we also have
So there's quite a few.
Tim Bush.
And you
said
got Tim Bush.
He said he would do it. So let us know if you think you'd be interested, because we could certainly set that up. But we're poised to do it, but we weren't sure how many people would want to do that. So thank you.
So I think it's 9 o'clock. We can wrap up now. Just maybe to reiterate next steps, on the website you'll see information about how to sign up for the home energy assessment. And then tonight, both Boucher and Wenzel will be out in the hall there, and you can sign up with them tonight to have them come and look at your home and give you a quote for air source or ground source heat pumps. So I'll thank everyone for coming out tonight on this night before the storm. And please, we'll all be sticking around, so come talk to us.